Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I am glad you could join me today. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends. There is so much going on. And listen, sometimes I can't make sense out of the senseless. I have no idea why the administration has invited Qatar to open up an airbase on one of our military bases. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm going to keep digging, see what I can find out about this. However, this is something that really raised a red flag with me, and it's something every American should be concerned about. But on a brighter note, you have Donald Trump just accomplishing what every president for decades promised but never delivered. And we're talking about a peace framework accepted by both Israel and Hamas. And I want that to really sink in for everyone, because both Israel and Hamas, they accept this framework for a ceasefire and a broader peace plan that has been brokered by Trump's team. You have key elements of this agreement: the cessation of hostilities, the demilitarization of Hamas, humanitarian corridors, prisoner exchanges, rebuilding mechanism overseen by regional partners like Egypt and Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Jordan. You have a rebuilding that will take place where the United States won't have to put in a single penny of taxpayer dollars because they're going to take it. The Arab country, the wealthy Arab countries are going to pay for it. And this isn't America acting as a global cop. This is strategic deal-making that we are seeing on the world stage. It's using our leverage and respect for America that's built through strength. I don't think people realize the significance if this plan actually succeeds. You know, no other U.S. president achieved this. In fact, more times than not, our actions in the Middle East under previous administrations have completely destabilized the region. It took someone from the outside, someone like a President Trump, that began to transform the Middle East. And it started with his first term with the Abraham Accords. He was someone that broke with the same tired and stale State Department orthodoxy when it comes to the Middle East, or everyone who says that peace is impossible in the Middle East. That's not necessarily true. And this agreement is the next logical step. It's a byproduct of the same doctrine of peace through strength. With that being said, I do want to make it clear that it is much easier to put words on paper and for everyone to say they accept the framework than it is to actually live by the agreement, for this agreement to actually become a full realization on the world stage. And everyone needs to recognize that this is by no means a done deal. It's very fragile. It could collapse fairly quickly if anyone was to do anything stupid. However, with that being said, I do believe cautious optimism is warranted because, as I said, we are seeing the Middle East transform before our eyes. It's amazing. It's becoming more modernized as the Western world, as Europe becomes more radical. Really amazing. And it started with Trump's first term, and it's not an accident that his first foreign trip of his second term was to this region. One of the things that Trump did at the second visit, the visit in his second term, was he told Middle Eastern leaders, we're going to stop dictating about how you live your lives. We're going to stop dictating about what your country should be, and we're going to start to improve economic ties, and we believe those economic ties will foster change within the Middle Eastern region. As you have the UAE embarking on a massive modernization program where they want to become, and they are, the world's #1 luxury tourist destination. Well, if you have terror attacks in your country, nobody's coming to visit. You're seeing Saudi Arabia doing the same thing. They understand oil is a finite resource, so they want to modernize. They want to make investments. They want to build out a tourism aspect in their own countries, so they've taken a harder stance towards terrorism. Why can't the same hold true for Gaza? If you look in Gaza, give people hope. You make the Palestinians actually have faith in their future, that they have stability, that they could economically raise a family, that they could transform their own country. it can make all the difference in the world. And President Trump has embarked on that. So now we see that both sides have agreed to the framework in this historic deal. But what really speaks volumes now, is how people like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, the AOCs of the world, Senator Bernie Sanders, so many other Democrats, they were screaming for genocide for years. For the last 2 years, they've been screaming about genocide. They've been screaming about that, this is all Israel's fault, never bringing up October 7th. And what have they said since the announcement of this potentially historic game-changing deal? The truth is nothing. So far, all we've heard is radio silence. That's it. They haven't said a thing. You can find hundreds of social media posts from them condemning Israel, bashing Israel, calling for an end to the war. Now you have the potential to get it. And since this deal has been announced, not a peep from them, not a single post praising the potential end to the conflict, at least as of this recording. And it exposes how their outrage, it's all performative. It's not principle-based. Even former President Obama, he posted about the agreement. He called it a hopeful day. He called it a good thing. But he couldn't bring himself to give credit where credit is due. He couldn't bring himself to give credit to President Trump. He didn't even mention President Trump's name. It's so pathetic. Peace should be everyone's goal. And you would think that everyone would be cheering this on, but there are so many in the United States and other Western countries where they're not happy about it, because I guess peace should be everyone's goal, unless apparently it's Trump who delivers it. But they could play these games all they want. The fact is, we are witnessing history in the making. We are witnessing Israel and Arab relations normalize. We're witnessing the weakening of Iran's influence, regional cooperation against terrorism, a shift towards stability, trade, and economics, the Middle East changing before our eyes, not through war, not through conflict, not through American troops, boots on the ground, toppling regimes, but through deal-making. That, to me, is something that Trump deserves a lot of credit for. And while Trump's achieving peace in one of the world's most volatile regions, volatile for thousands of years, back home you have the left and many within our own government seem determined to sow chaos. And I'm going to explain exactly what I'm talking about when we get back from a quick break. So everyone, hang tight. We'll be right back. It's no secret that as we age, our bodies begin to break down. Now, if you want to move with ease and keep your skin glowing and youthful, you got to try Native Path Collagen. It's made with only type 1 and 3 collagen. These are the two most important types that make up 90% of your body's collagen, and they're found in your skin, bones, joints, and gut. They deliver powerful benefits without any fillers or additives. I have it every morning with my coffee, and it's a single ingredient, flavorless powder that mixes easily into the coffee. But you could also put it in smoothies, oatmeal. It's third-party tested for purity, and it absorbs fast thanks to its peptide form. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, and 8,000 5-star reviews, Native Path is a brand you could trust, backed by a 365-day no-risk guarantee, live phone support where you talk to a real person. They make it easy to get started. So check out the bundle deals and join their private Facebook group for recipes and support. Visit getnativepath.com/PAS. That's getnativepath.com/PAS. Welcome back to the P.A.S. Report podcast. Now, in this segment, I want to turn to the revelations that our government spied on 8 Republican senators. And you'll see how it also ties into the first segment by the end. But while the media is busy ignoring it, you have Senator Chuck Grassley, who just dropped a political bombshell, and every American should be talking about this. The FBI spied on 8 sitting, duly elected members of the United States Senate, 8 of them. And I want that to sink in. This was our FBI surveilling our elected officials. And according to the information that's been released, these weren't just random wiretaps. It was part of Operation Arctic Frost, which I brought up a couple of weeks ago, and you need to check out that episode because it ties directly in with the National Strategy for Countering Domestic Terrorism. It's obvious. This was politically motivated. There's no disputing that. People will be like, oh, well, these senators were involved in January 6th and an effort to undermine the election. No, this was a political witch hunt. And when you look at the party affiliation, what do you see? You see it's all Republicans, and it shouldn't even matter what the party affiliation is. Even if they were monitoring both Republican and Democratic senators, that wouldn't make it right. I wouldn't be like, oh, okay, as long as they were monitoring both political sides of the aisle, I would be just as outraged because we've seen this before. It just was the CIA, not the FBI. And these 8 senators were being monitored as part of a so-called investigation. That's a bunch of hogwash. I want you to think about what this means for a second. The intelligence and law enforcement agencies on the federal level who are supposed to protect our republic are now treating duly elected members of the United States Senate as potential targets. This isn't some isolated scandal. Some will be like, all right, well, now Trump's in office, so it ends. No, that's not the way it works. Because this is part of a long, ugly pattern, a pattern where we've witnessed the bureaucracy completely become unhinged, where the bureaucracy has gone rogue, where it's drunk on its own power. And all you have to do is rewind for a moment. If you notice, when I started this podcast, I quickly began laying out the abuses of our own government. We had the NSA's prison program secretly collecting the metadata of every single American, your emails, your phone calls, your locations. We had the Lois Lerner IRS targeting Tea Party groups because they were conservative and she disagreed with their ideology. Nobody ever held accountable, of course. You have the CIA caught spying on the Senate Intelligence Committee, the very committee that's supposed to provide oversight over them. And yeah, they feigned their outrage, but they didn't do a damn thing about it. Then you've got the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Administration, who has been building out a massive database of gun overs. They've collected over 1 billion records, and this story hasn't nearly gotten the attention it deserves, because why are they collecting all these records unless it was to build a database, even though Congress explicitly forbade them from doing that, and yet they're doing it anyway. The United States Postal Service, yes, the people who deliver your mail, ran a program called ICOP. They scanned American social media posts and flagged them for the Department of Homeland Security. The Inspector General of the United States Postal Service said that this program goes against what the Postal Service is supposed to be doing in the first place, but also that it's most likely highly illegal. And yet, who is held accountable for that? You had the Department of Homeland Security Stanford Election Integrity Project, which was really just a government-sponsored operation to conduct censorship and silence Americans online. Look at how the FBI pressured to silence and censor thousands upon thousands of people throughout the coronavirus. They tried to censor the Hunter Biden laptop. You had people like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who was pretty much spot on in his assessments when it came to the coronavirus, yet he was silenced. You have people that just expressed opinions, and they were being looked at as if they were domestic violent extremists. And Operation Crossfire Hurricane, the phony Russian collusion probe that kneecapped the first Trump administration. We now know that FBI analysts routinely and illegally searched through the NSA database, where they have been lambasted by the federal court system on several occasions, saying they are legally accessing the NSA's repository on Americans. Who's been held accountable for that? You have Tulsi Gabbard declassifying information, showing abuses of power within the government, and yet nothing. We've witnessed repeated violations of FISA's Section 702 rules time and time again. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of violations, if not well over 1 million violations. We saw the Clinton email cover-up, the targeting of Catholics, the collusion with the National School Board Association to label parents as domestic terrorists, FinCEN working with banks to flag people, not because they're potential terrorists, but because of their political views. And we just found out about the Domestic Security Alliance Council, the DSAC portal, where the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security were quietly feeding intelligence products to private banks, products that encourage banks to flag conservatives as potential violent extremists. Every single one of these examples represents a government that's no longer serving the people, it's policing them. And the truth of the matter is there are a ton more examples. These are the ones I can recall off the top of my head. So the American people are being spied on. The American people are being silenced. Duly elected members of the United States Senate, people that we send to represent us in our states, are being spied on. And it's all being done with our taxpayer dollars. We're the ones paying for this. But what's truly infuriating, and it's something I rarely hear anyone say out loud, this isn't Biden's FBI. It wasn't Obama's CIA. I am so sick and tired of Republicans going out there, well, Biden's FBI did this, and Obama's FBI and CIA did that. No, That's not the way it works. Republicans need to stop with the attaching of the Biden label or the Obama label to it, because that diminishes just how corrupt the bureaucracy has become. When you attach the name Biden or Obama, it diminishes the abuses, and it makes it seem as if you just get Republicans elected. You put Republicans in charge, the abuses won't happen. Understand that is nothing more than just an illusion. Because keep in mind that many of the abuses that we've witnessed over the last 2 decades, particularly those against Trump, occurred when Trump was in office. You have a bureaucracy that believes it has more power and should have more power than the president, a bureaucracy that believes that it gets to determine who is rightfully allowed to lead the United States, not the people speaking with their voices at the ballot box. They believe that they get to decide who's fit for office and who's not. So to every Republican out there, stop attaching the Biden and Obama labels. The truth is that it's the bureaucracy. It's the bureaucracy's FBI. It's the permanent government that exists. The names at the top may change every 4 or 8 years. But the people underneath it, the unelected bureaucrats, mostly stay where they are. And they're the ones that are running the show. It's why I refer to the bureaucracy as the fourth branch of government that seems to believe it's separate and apart from the checks and balances, that it operates outside constitutional safeguards. And quite frankly, they don't give a damn, because they view themselves as the protectors of the system. So when I hear Republicans say things like, we've got to fix Biden's FBI, or we need to clean house after the administration, it aggravates me. Because it's obvious they don't get it, and that's not the problem. This has been decades in the making under both Democrat and Republican administrations, where the power of government has just expanded, and the problem is the system itself, a bureaucracy that has accumulated so much power that it operates as its own branch. That's the greatest threat to the Republic. And yes, there's a lot of Republican outrage right now. I understand that. They're the ones that were being spied on. But I've seen that outrage before, and guess where it leads? Leads to nothing. You'll hear them talk about the need for accountability, special counsels, all fine. Obviously, we need accountability. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out when a bureaucrat abuses their power, they should be punished for it. They shouldn't be promoted. They should lose their job. They should be demoted. They should lose their pensions. And if they committed any criminal acts, they should be put in prison. But I want you to take a listen to what people like Senator Josh Hawley are saying, someone who I do respect, but I don't think understands the gravity of the situation. And more importantly, listen to what Josh Hawley doesn't say.
So what are we going to do about this?
Well, what needs to happen is we need a special prosecutor who's going to go at this hard. I mean, we need to get all of the corruption uncovered. What we have here is rot that goes all through the FBI, that goes all through the DOJ. As Cash said a second ago in the clip you played, they've had decades to assemble this deep state. We need to disassemble it. We need somebody who is going after every person who was involved in this, who's going to expose it. We need hearings in public, put these people under oath, start with Jack Smith. Let's hear from Merrick Garland. Let's hear from Christopher Wray. And anybody who broke the law needs to be prosecuted.
Now, don't get me wrong. He's right to demand accountability, but accountability itself is not enough. It doesn't go nearly far enough. And in his own statement, he actually admits that this is decades in the making, that this has been built up over a long period of time and it spans administrations. But accountability is virtually non-existent because the same ones that abuse their powers are the ones responsible for policing their abuses. Congress has long abdicated its responsibility of oversight. And all you have to do is look at the national strategy, where they deem anyone who criticized the government and the abuses of government as expressing anti-government, anti-authority sentiment. And when it comes to anti-authority, the strategy explicitly states that those who express anti-authority sentiment do so because of perceived government overreach, that it's not really happening. It's just based on someone's perception. So the ones that are being accused of government overreach are the same ones who will determine whether the government is actually overreaching or not. How does that work? How's it worked out for us so far? So let's be honest. Accountability is nothing more than a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. You can fire a few people, you could prosecute a few bad actors like James Comey, like the John Brennans of the world, but that doesn't fix the system. It's not fixing the problems that enable this behavior in the first place. And the reality is we've tried that. The bureaucracy just grows bigger, stronger. It continues to usurp more power. It gets more money, more staff, more authority, and more excuses for its failures, despite both Republicans and Democrats providing more money, giving it more statutory authority. Congress keeps approving these bloated budgets for these agencies year after year, and most Republicans do support it without hesitation, despite constantly being the ones targeted by this same bureaucracy. And I'm not aware of a single Republican that has introduced a serious bill to strip statutory authority from the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security. I mean, maybe someone like Senator Rand Paul has, and I just don't know. But most Republicans, along with Democrats, continue to push for the big government apparatus. And what drives me nuts is Republicans are the ones that usually campaign on the concepts of limited government, but they don't want limited government. Not one has proposed serious cuts in funding to the agencies that have abused their power over and over and over again. No one has proposed any serious legislation that strips away statutory authority from the bureaucracy, despite being the ones with the power of oversight. Instead, they go out there, they feign outrage on cable news, but then they quietly vote for the same appropriations bills that keep this beast being fed, that keep it growing larger and larger. And meanwhile, what's the result? They're spying on senators. They're labeling parents as threats. And then they miss the actual dangers that this country faces, the ones that actually cost American lives. They built one of the largest surveillance apparatuses in human history, yet somehow they can't find the people actually planning violence. I mean, think about it. Do we know any more about the January 6th pipe bomber than we do when it first happened? No, we haven't learned anything new. We still have no idea about that. We still don't know about the Las Vegas shooter from years ago. Still have no idea what the motivations were, who he really was. Nothing new. We don't know about the first Trump assassin. We have no idea about his background. And yet we just forget about it. You know, if it doesn't fit in within a 15-second narrative, you know, the news cycle, then we just move on to the next big thing. It really is astonishing. This is where we see the hypocrisy of the so-called intelligence community, and it becomes unbearable. They claim that all this is necessary for our safety, all for national security, but the truth is the bigger the bureaucracy gets, the less safe we become. And it's because power without accountability always leads to corruption, and corruption in the end will lead to failure. And here's the point that nobody wants to talk about. The FBI and our intelligence communities have crossed the Rubicon. They're no longer instruments of justice. I hate to say it that way, but that's the truth. They become instruments of political and bureaucratic control. Until Congress grabs their cojones and has the courage to defund, dismantle, and rebuild these institutions from the ground up, nothing is going to change. You can't reform something that's structurally rotten, and that's what it's become. You have to rebuild it. It has to be smaller, it has to be transparent, and it has to be strictly limited in its statutory authority by laws that Congress passes, and you have to provide real oversight. And there's so much irony in this, because when bureaucrats talk about protecting democracy, what they're really protecting is themselves and the abusive bureaucracy. They protect their budgets, they protect their turf, their jobs. It's not about the republic. So when you hear the next politician saying we just need accountability, I want everyone to remember, accountability without reform is meaningless. Justice without structural change is nothing more than political theater. And as long as these agencies operate without real oversight, as long as they operate outside the constitutional checks, we quickly morph into a banana republic, and our voices, the American people's voices, means absolutely nothing. You have to see that there are no consequences of the bureaucratic obsession, where our intelligence community is too busy targeting Americans to notice the real threats out there, of which there are many. Because while they're spying on senators, while they're flagging parents, while they're targeting Catholics, while they're calling out Republicans and conservatives as domestic enemies, We had an anti-Catholic extremist with nearly 200 explosives caught planning to attack a church that was going to be attended by some members of the Supreme Court. We've seen Islamic radicals in New York waving Hamas flags, promising another October 7th, and nothing. We've witnessed violence against people like Charlie Kirk, where he was cowardly assassinated, all because of his political beliefs and how he believed that free debate is what makes America such an exceptional nation. It seems that there are very few in the bureaucracy who care about those types of attacks. And after the break, I'm going to break it down even further. So everyone, hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the P.A.S. Report podcast. Now, if you haven't done so and you're enjoying the content of this episode, please give the P.A.S. Report podcast a 5-star rating. Take 30 seconds to write a good review on any podcast platform that allows it. And also make sure you post this episode on your social media because it's not getting enough attention that it nearly deserves. And tag me in the post at P.A.S. Report. Let's amplify how the bureaucracy has completely breached the public trust and how it needs to be reined in. Because I covered in the last segment the FBI spying on 8 sitting members of the United States Senate, and I explained how that's completely unacceptable. It's a reminder that Washington's permanent bureaucracy is no longer accountable to the people. Now, I want to show you exactly what happens when the same bureaucracy obsesses over ordinary Americans and what they perceive as political opponents, instead of focusing on actual threats that exist out there. Because while they monitor your bank accounts, while they flag your social media posts, real extremists are slipping right through their fingers. And let's start with a story that the corporate media has barely touched. A man caught with nearly 200 explosives planning to attack a Catholic cathedral, the very church where Supreme Court justices were expected to attend a mass. And get this, it wasn't the FBI or the Department of Homeland Security that stopped them. It wasn't the multi-billion-dollar task forces. It was the local police officers who were out on routine patrol, and they noticed something was off. They noticed something wasn't right, and they decided to investigate. That's what real policing looks like. Instinct, vigilance, awareness, not algorithms, not dragnets, not warrantless databases, not traps to try and get people to commit crimes. We know that this suspect hated Catholics. He wrote about wanting to punish them. And yet the FBI has been targeting traditional Catholics, labeling them as potential domestic extremists because they may want to attend the Latin Mass. They may oppose abortion. Well, maybe they believe that God created just 2 genders. So think about that. The same agency that spent its time infiltrating parishes and churches couldn't find a man building about 200 bombs to blow up a church and kill people inside. It tells you everything about how broken this system actually is. And it's not just with that case. Let's go to New York City. Look at what happened literally a week ago. Oh, wait, you probably have no idea what happened because, God forbid, the media actually focuses on real stories as opposed to BS gossip and innuendo. And for those of you that don't know, a crowd of radical Islamists, and yes, that's what I'm calling them because they're waving Hamas flags, marching through the streets, shouting threats against America. And I want you to take a listen to this.
We did not act enough. We did not act enough. Repeat after me. We did not act enough. We did not act enough. If we acted enough. The headline behind me would read. Gaza has been liberated. So our work is not done. We must show up. Stronger than we did the first October 7th. Louder than we did the first October 7th. To make it clear that we are not going anywhere. We will keep fighting until Palestine is free. From the river to the sea. Within our lifetime. Make some noise.
Now, that's a direct threat. We did not act enough. We will show up stronger than we did the first October 7th. That's a direct call for violence on American soil. You know, I brought up the idea about the Trojan horse within our country a few weeks ago. This is it. You would think that the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and every so-called counterterrorism analyst in D.C. would be sounding the alarm bells. People waving Hamas flags saying that they're going to show up stronger than they did on October 7th. Instead, they're silent because so many of them are pathetic losers where their political ideology is the driving force, not actual threats. They're too busy investigating parents at school board meetings instead. And let me ask you, what's a greater threat to national security? A parent upset about a pornographic book in their kid's classroom, or a mob of radical Islamists chanting support for terrorism in Times Square, calling for more October 7ths, not just against Israel, but against the United States? That's not just rhetoric. It goes beyond radical Islam. We had a Minnesota school shooting a few weeks ago, a Mormon church in Michigan targeted by a gunman, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, murdered for political activism. Yet none of those cases triggered nationwide alerts, DHS briefings, and it's because they didn't fit the preferred narrative. That's why. A lot of people say, oh, it's just the people at the top, the Comeys, the Brennans, the McCabe's. No, the agencies are rotten. See, when violence targets conservatives, Christians, or Jews, it's overblown. It's exaggerated. The bureaucracy yawns. But when they twist incidents into right-wing extremism, the response is instant. When they try and put an entire group of people as Republicans or conservatives, even though they're not even remotely similar, as I covered on the last week's segment when I was talking about right-wing extremism and we talked about white supremacy, well, then they'll quickly say that it's all Republicans, all conservatives. And this is the conversation that no one in Washington wants to have because it exposes the entire racket. The intelligence community doesn't exist to protect you anymore. The intent when it started may have been good, but now it exists to protect itself. It protects its budget. It protects its bureaucrats. It protects its grip on authority. And it thinks it knows better. It knows what's in your best interest rather than you and your family. And how do they do this? Well, they do this through fear because it needs fear to thrive. Manufactured fear. It's all fake. But they need the fear of misinformation, fear of parents, fear of those who have faith, fear of patriots, fear of Americans who simply question their government. Meanwhile, you have real terrorists from anti-Catholic bombers to jihadist radicals operating out in the open, telling everyone what they really intend to do, but the bureaucracy does nothing because its priorities are completely upside down. And we've created a security state so bloated, so self-absorbed that it can't do the one job it was built for, to really keep us safe. And the truth is that common sense and accountability work. Centralized bureaucracy does not work. Our founding fathers warned us against it. Instead of learning that lesson, what does Washington do? Well, they call for more funding. We need more fusion centers. We need more algorithms to track online sentiment. In other words, they basically double down on the very thing that isn't working in the first place, and that represents a threat to the people's power. The bigger picture that nobody in the media will say out loud, power is the one resource government never relinquishes voluntarily. And once a bureaucracy gains it, it hoards it, it expands it, justifies it, and they do it through fear. Every abuse, every scandal followed by a promise, oh, we're going to internally reform. We're going to reform from within. Yet what reforms have really taken place, with the exception of the Directorate of National Intelligence Office with Tulsi Gabbard at the helm, where she actually fired 40% of her staff, where she actually is implementing some real reforms, bringing it back to post 9/11 where it was. Yet in the bureaucracy, what we have seen for far too long is that those that have consistently failed, whether it's failed through policy, like many of the generals when it comes to Afghanistan, the State Department officials, the intelligence officials that all lied for 20 years telling us that the Afghan government was stable, that the security forces could hold the country. Nobody's ever held accountable. You have people who grossly abuse their power, never held accountable. Instead, they're actually promoted from within. And every time the bureaucracy just grows larger and larger. We've reached a point where the unelected govern the elected, as we're witnessing with 8 senators being spied on. And that should terrify anyone who still believes in the idea of self-government. Unfortunately, our school system, most people don't know what self-government is. But here's what we need to do. We need to stop pretending that internal reforms are enough. You can't reform a system that's structurally corrupt. You have to strip it of its authority. You have to slash its funding. You have to start over in some cases. And that may mean breaking up the FBI, particularly the National Security Division, separate it out from the criminal investigations that they were actually really good at doing. It means forcing intelligence agencies to justify every single dollar that's being spent, every single program, every surveillance tool in public, and not give them the incentive to find other threats out there just because they want to keep their budgets going. We have to reestablish strict congressional oversight. And when I say congressional oversight, I don't mean these endless hearings that never go anywhere. I'm tired of listening to testimonies about the abuses of power and nothing happens. I'm talking about congressional oversight where there's real penalties for violations. And that means defunding the programs that target Americans. It means holding the bureaucrats accountable, because a government that can spy on senators, a government that spies on Catholics, but it's missing assassins and bombers and jihadists, they don't deserve any more money. Not for nothing. But I want you to think about the contrast. Donald Trump, a private citizen turned president, manages to bring Israel and Hamas to the negotiating table, achieving a framework that everyone thought was impossible. Peace in one of the most volatile regions on earth. You have Palestinians, Israelis, many in the Arab world applauding the deal. Meanwhile, here in the United States, what do we have? Well, the media, some Americans, and even some of our politicians continue to push Hamas propaganda. They don't even acknowledge the potentially historic deal. You have a president that is pushing peace all over the world, yet he's labeled a dictator. He wants to kill people. And who does the left defend? Who do these media acolytes defend? Well, they defend Antifa. They defend criminal illegal aliens. They defend drug smugglers. They call for resistance. But my question is, resistance to what? The man they call dangerous. The man who they say represents an existential threat to the world, brings calm to the Middle East, yet so many in America that claim to protect and defend democracy want to sow chaos here at home. So many want to see the United States collapse, want to see it fail. So many want to protect their own power. Maybe the question isn't whether the bureaucracy needs reform. Maybe the real question is whether the American people are going to be able to survive its existence. And we need to look internally, and that's the challenge for us ahead, internally, as to why so many people within America despise America. Why do we let in people in America that despise America? That, to me, I mean, you don't need to import people that hate you. We need to look at the bureaucracy, why so many within the bureaucracy think that they could do whatever the hell they want, consequences be damned. Again, we don't need more hearings. We don't need more sound bites. We don't need more special counsels that end up going nowhere. We need structural change. More importantly, we need the will to actually make that change happen. Because if these agencies can't protect us, then what good are they? Then what good are they? Might as well get rid of them. If they can't protect us and they decide to target us, then it's time that we protect America from these agencies. Now, if you found the content of this show informative, please give the P.A.S. report a 5-star rating, take 30 seconds to write a review, and share this episode with your family and friends. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back on Wednesday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at PAS Report.